I'm Megan Reynolds, 32, and the day I discovered my parents had transferred our family metal shop to my sister's husband Tyler was the day my world shattered. 16 years of sweat, burns, and dedication meant nothing as I stood there, holding transfer papers, giving them 75% ownership. Rachel barely knew which end of a welding torch to hold, and Tyler had been with us just 3 years. Yet, there I was, the backbone of Reynolds Custom Metal Works, suddenly an outsider in my own legacy. Blood might be thicker than water, but betrayal cuts deeper than any metal I've ever forged. Before I dive into this painful story, drop a comment letting me know where you're watching from. Hit that like and subscribe button if you've ever felt undervalued by the people who should appreciate you most. Trust me, what happened next in this family drama will make your jaw drop. The smell of hot metal and the rhythmic ping of hammers formed the soundtrack of my childhood. Reynolds Custom Metal Works wasn't just a business, it was our family's heartbeat. My grandfather started it in a tiny garage 45 years ago with nothing but determination and skilled hands. By the time my father Warren took over, it had grown into a respected local establishment known for quality craftsmanship. I was drawn to the shop floor from the moment I could walk. While other kids played with dolls, I was fascinated by the sparks flying from the grinder, the glowing metal emerging from the forge. My father noticed my interest and started teaching me small things: how different metals felt in your hands, how to recognize quality work, the importance of precision. By age 12, everyone realized I had a natural talent. What took others months to master, I picked up in weeks. I still remember the pride in my dad's eyes when I completed my first solo project. A decorative metal rose that came out so perfect, he displayed it in the front office. "You've got the Reynolds touch," he told me, his hand heavy on my shoulder. That moment sealed my future. Through high school, while friends were at football games and dances, I spent weekends and summers apprenticing under my father and our master metalworker, George. I learned every technique, every machine, every supplier. When graduation came, college wasn't even a consideration for me. Why would I need a degree when my future was already laid out in steel and iron? My sister Rachel was different. 2 years younger than me, she had zero interest in getting her hands dirty. She was all about business classes, marketing books, and spreadsheets. While I was perfecting my welding technique, she was getting her business degree at State University. I never begrudged her different path. We each had our strengths. By 25, I had become the shop's most valuable craftsperson. Clients specifically requested my work. I developed new techniques that set us apart from competitors, modernizing traditional metal crafting methods while maintaining the quality our reputation was built on. I created a specialized process for decorative architectural elements that brought in a whole new client base of high-end builders. Dad never missed an opportunity to tell me, "Someday this will all be yours, Megan." He'd gesture around the shop with pride, and I believed him. Why wouldn't I? I'd sacrificed my youth, turned down other opportunities, even ended a serious relationship because my boyfriend wanted to move to Chicago. The shop was my identity, my future, my legacy. When Rachel married Tyler Williams 6 years ago, nobody expected him to take an interest in the family business. He was a pharmaceutical sales rep with a flashy car and expensive suits. Metal work didn't exactly fit his manicured image. Their wedding was extravagant, and afterward, they bought a house in the upscale part of town. Meanwhile, I was living in a modest apartment, saving for the day I'd take over the business. As my parents entered their 60s, retirement discussions began. Dad started having back problems, and Mom wanted to travel more. It seemed like the natural time for succession planning. I was ready. Not just technically proficient, but equipped with years of vendor relationships, customer knowledge, and management experience gained from running day-to-day operations when Dad needed time off. I never saw the betrayal coming. Not until it was too late. The first red flag appeared 3 years ago. Tyler showed up at a family dinner announcing he was feeling unfulfilled in pharmaceutical sales and wanted a career change. By dessert, he was talking about getting involved in the family business. Rachel enthusiastically supported the idea, suggesting he could learn the business side while I handled the technical aspects. My parents' reaction should have warned me. They were absolutely thrilled. as if Tyler had announced he'd discovered the cure for cancer. Mom immediately started talking about how perfect it would be to keep everything in the family. Dad nodded along, speaking about new blood and fresh perspectives as if our successful business of 4 decades desperately needed salvation. I tried to be supportive, offering to teach Tyler the basics. After all, anyone joining the shop needed to understand the fundamentals of metalwork, even if they were focusing on management. He spent a few weeks shadowing me, asking questions and taking notes. I showed him our processes, introduced him to clients, explained our quality standards. Within a month, he'd stopped showing up at the workshop and instead installed himself in the office. He began attending client meetings I should have been part of. I'd overhear him presenting my ideas as his own, taking credit for techniques I'd developed years ago. When I confronted him privately, he dismissed my concerns with a patronizing smile. "We're family now, Megan. We're all on the same team." Family dinners became strategy sessions where Tyler would dominate conversations with his vision for the company. Rachel would beam with pride while my parents nodded enthusiastically. Whenever I tried to contribute, I'd be interrupted or my points would be dismissed as too traditional. Somehow, the fact that I'd dedicated my life to mastering this craft became a liability rather than an asset. Then came the cost-cutting measures. Tyler identified our materials as unnecessarily premium and switched to cheaper suppliers. When I objected that it would compromise our work quality, he accused me of being stuck in the past and resistant to necessary changes. My father, who had once prided himself on using only the best materials, now backed Tyler's decision. The rebranding was next. Our simple, respected logo was replaced with a modern, corporate design that stripped away all character. Our workshop walls, once decorated with photos documenting our history, were painted sterile white. Tyler hired a marketing firm that knew nothing about metalwork to overhaul our image, and suddenly we were promising innovative solutions instead of quality craftsmanship. Most alarming was how customer relationships began to change. Clients who had specifically requested my work for years were suddenly being redirected to other staff members. When they asked for me, they were told I was unavailable or focusing on other projects. In reality, I was being deliberately sidelined. One afternoon, I overheard Tyler in the office with my parents and Rachel. They were discussing the business's future, and I wasn't included. I stood frozen outside the door as Tyler laid out his 5-year plan for Reynolds Custom Metal Works, a plan that barely mentioned custom metal work at all. He wanted to pivot toward mass production of decorative items, outsource the actual metalwork to cheaper fabricators, and focus on building an online presence. Everything my grandfather and father had built was being dismantled by someone who couldn't even properly use a blowtorch. When I brought my concerns to my mother privately, her response stunned me. "Honey, you need to be more supportive of Tyler's vision. He has a business degree, after all. Times are changing, and we need to change with them." The implication was clear: my years of experience, my craftsmanship, my dedication to quality. None of it mattered as much as Tyler's MBA and flashy PowerPoint presentations. I was being erased from the very business I had helped build, piece by piece, day by day, and my own family was holding the eraser. The night everything fell apart started innocently enough. Mom invited the whole family for dinner, saying she and Dad had an important announcement. I assumed it was about their retirement timeline, something we'd been discussing for months. I even brought a bottle of champagne, thinking we'd be celebrating my official transition into leadership. The dining room table was set with Mom's best china, a sign of the occasion's importance. Dad seemed nervous, which I attributed to the big life change retirement represented. Rachel and Tyler arrived late. Tyler checking his phone constantly throughout the appetizer course, Rachel wearing a smile that now seems predatory in hindsight. After dinner, Dad cleared his throat and announced they had finalized their succession plan for Reynolds Custom Metal Works. My heart swelled with anticipation. This was it, the moment I'd worked 16 years for, the fulfillment of countless promises. Then Dad pushed a folder across the table, not to me, but to Tyler. "We've transferred majority ownership to Rachel and Tyler," he announced, unable to meet my eyes. "They'll be taking over effective immediately." The room tilted sideways. I reached for the papers with trembling hands, scanning legal jargon that confirmed my worst nightmare. 75% ownership transferred to Rachel and Tyler, with only a 25% minority stake reserved for me. I would have no decision-making power, no control over the business I'd helped build, no say in its future. "This can't be right," I whispered, looking up at my father. "Dad, you always said the shop would be mine someday." Mom jumped in, her voice artificially bright. "Isn't this wonderful, Megan? You'll still be part of the business, but without all the headache of managing everything. You can focus on what you love, the metalwork." Tyler straightened his tie, assuming a practiced expression of magnanimity. "We value your contribution, Megan. You'll remain our head craftsperson with a generous salary. Nothing changes day to day." Except everything had changed. I wasn't being offered leadership. I was being relegated to employee status in my own family business. "Why?" I managed to ask, my voice barely audible. Dad finally spoke, his explanation rehearsed. "Rachel and Tyler have business degrees. In today's market, we need modern management approaches. Tyler's already demonstrated his vision with the rebranding and efficiency improvements." "Efficiency improvements?" I echoed in disbelief. "You mean cutting corners on materials and alienating our loyal customers?" Rachel reached across the table in a show of sympathy that never reached her eyes. "We know this is a adjustment, sis, but it's what's best for the company's future." She turned to Mom, adding, "I was thinking we could renovate the office next month. That wood paneling is so outdated." They were already redecorating, already erasing every trace of the business my grandfather had built, that my father had grown, that I had modernized and sustained. The betrayal cut deeper when I noticed the date on the transfer papers. They had been signed 3 months ago. For 3 months, they'd known this was coming while I worked tirelessly, believing in promises that had already been broken. I confronted my father directly. "All those times you said, 'Someday this will be yours,' was that always a lie?" His face flushed. "It's not that simple, Megan. The business world has changed. We need Tyler's business acumen. It's what's best for the company's future." "What's best for the company?" I repeated incredulously. The company's reputation was built on craftsmanship and quality. "Everything Tyler's been dismantling." Mom touched my arm, her voice condescending. "Honey, you were always meant to be the worker, not the boss. You're wonderful with your hands, but running a business requires different skills." The words struck like physical blows. 16 years of dedication reduced to good with your hands. As if I hadn't also managed vendors, developed client relationships, handled scheduling, and trained new staff. Tyler leaned forward, his voice oozing false concern. "We'd like to offer you a 5-year contract as head craftsperson." Very generous terms. He slid another document toward me, an employment contract for the business I should have inherited. I stood up so abruptly my chair crashed backwards. "Keep your contract," I said, my voice shaking with rage and hurt. "And keep the 25%. I don't want any part of what you're turning this business into." I walked out of my parents' house, leaving behind even the tools I'd used for years. Tools that suddenly felt tainted by broken promises and family betrayal. The first week after walking out, I barely left my apartment. I cycled through disbelief, rage, and crushing depression. My entire identity had been built around Reynolds Custom Metal Works. Without it, who was I? My modest one-bedroom apartment became both sanctuary and prison. I'd always lived frugally, saving for the future. A future that had evaporated. My savings wouldn't last long, but I couldn't bring myself to look for work. The thought of crafting metal for someone else's shop felt like another betrayal. Sleep became elusive, replaced by endless mental replays of warning signs I should have noticed. The gradual sidelining, the private conversations, the way Tyler had methodically positioned himself while I naively trusted family bonds would protect me. Most painful were the memories of my father's promises. "Someday this will all be yours." Words now revealed as empty. Financial reality soon forced its way through my emotional fog. Rent was due. Bills accumulated. My phone buzzed with concerned texts from friends I couldn't bring myself to answer. What would I say? That I'd been naive enough to trust my own family? That 16 years of dedication meant nothing against an MBA and a connection to my sister? A week after my departure, Nick, our longtime finish specialist, called to check on me. "It's gone to hell since you left, Megan," he said. Tyler's implemented a streamlined production process that's basically assembly line work. No customization, no artistry. 3 other employees called in the following days with similar reports. Tyler was systematically dismantling everything that had made Reynolds Custom Metal Works special. Then loyal customers began reaching out. The Hendersons, who had commissioned custom railings for 3 different homes, wanted to know why their latest project looked mass-produced. James Whitfield, an architect who exclusively specified our metalwork for his high-end residential projects, was concerned about inconsistent quality. They all asked for me specifically, unaware I was no longer involved. Meanwhile, Tyler's changes accelerated. Through the grapevine, I learned he'd fired George, our master metalworker who'd been with the company for 30 years, replacing him with cheaper, less experienced staff. The specialized tools I'd convinced my father to invest in were being sold off as unnecessary expenses. My sister's social media became a particular form of torture. Rachel posted gleaming photos of their business, posing in the office I should have inherited. So exciting to continue the Reynolds legacy. One caption read, "As if she had contributed anything to building that legacy." Another showed her and Tyler at an industry cocktail event, networking with potential clients who had no idea they were speaking to people who couldn't distinguish between wrought iron and mild steel. In desperation, I consulted a lawyer about my options. His assessment was blunt. The transfer was legal. Your parents had every right to give the business to whomever they chose. The fact that there were verbal promises doesn't override the signed documents. My 25% stake gave me no real power. I could receive quarterly profits, if there were any after Tyler's improvements, but I had no control over business decisions. With nothing to lose, I accepted when my friend Marcos offered his garage for a small project. A regular customer had tracked me down, insisting only I could create the custom fireplace screen he wanted. Working in that cramped, inadequate space with borrowed tools felt simultaneously humiliating and liberating. The familiar rhythm of metal work soothed my fractured spirit, even as it reminded me of all I'd lost. The breaking point came when I saw the shop's latest advertising. Tyler had completely rebranded, emphasizing modern production techniques and affordable metal solutions, everything counter to what Reynolds Custom Metal Works had represented for decades. The craftsmanship my grandfather had established, my father had maintained, and I had enhanced was being systematically erased and replaced with mediocrity. That night, I found myself driving aimlessly, eventually parking outside the darkened shop. Through the windows, I could see everything changed. Workstations rearranged for assembly line production, quality materials replaced with cheaper alternatives, family photos removed from walls. It wasn't just that I'd lost my place in the family business. The family business itself was disappearing. As I sat there in the dark, headlights illuminated the parking lot. It was Frank Hamilton, our longtime supplier, arriving to drop off a late delivery. He recognized my car and approached, concern etched on his weathered face. "They don't know what they're doing in there," he said without preamble. "Your sister's husband just ordered the cheapest alloy we carry for the Peterson project. That won't hold up to the specifications." I nodded numbly. Not my problem anymore. Frank studied me for a long moment. "So what are you going to do, Megan? Let 16 years of mastering your craft go to waste? There's always been room in this town for quality metalwork." His words planted a seed, one that would grow into something I couldn't yet imagine through the fog of betrayal and loss. The turning point came during another sleepless night. Staring at my ceiling at 3 a.m., a clarity I hadn't felt since before the betrayal washed over me. I'd been defining myself by what I'd lost rather than what I still possessed. My skills, my knowledge, my reputation for quality work. Those couldn't be transferred in legal documents or taken away by family betrayal. By dawn, I was at my small kitchen table with a notebook, methodically listing everything needed to start my own metal fabrication business. The list was daunting. Workshop space, equipment, materials, licenses, insurance, marketing, and all of it required significant capital I didn't have. But for the first time since walking out of my parents' house, I had a purpose again. I began researching small business loans, creating spreadsheets of startup costs, projected income, and break-even timelines. My apartment walls became covered with notes and plans. I might not have Tyler's MBA, but 16 years in the business had taught me plenty about what made a metal shop successful and what customers actually valued. Taking inventory of my assets yielded more than expected. I had extensive knowledge of suppliers, materials, and processes. I knew which equipment was essential and which was luxury. Most importantly, I had relationships with clients who valued quality craftsmanship, clients who had been contacting me directly, disappointed with the changes at Reynolds. The first step was securing future work. I reached out to James Whitfield, the architect who had specified our metalwork exclusively for years. Over coffee, I explained my situation and plans. He listened intently, then pulled out blueprints for an upcoming project, a lakeside mansion requiring extensive custom metalwork. I was going to find another fabricator, he admitted. The quality from Reynolds has tanked, but if you're starting your own shop, I'd rather wait for someone whose work I trust. He offered a 50% deposit on a significant commission, enough to cover several months' rent on a workshop space. The only catch, I needed to deliver within 4 months. Without equipment or space, it was a daunting deadline, but the opportunity was too important to pass up. With James's project as motivation, I scoured industrial areas for affordable space, eventually finding a rundown, former auto shop on the outskirts of town. The rent was within my budget. The space had the necessary power connections for metalworking equipment, and the landlord was willing to offer 2 months free in exchange for improvements to the property. The next hurdle was equipment. I approached Riverdale Bank with a detailed business plan, market analysis, and the signed contract from James Whitfield. Despite my preparation, the loan officer's response was discouraging. "You have excellent technical knowledge, Miss Reynolds, but no business management experience. It's too risky without a proven track record as an owner." That evening, I received an unexpected call from Jessica Miller, who had worked in our office handling customer service and bookkeeping before Tyler fired her. "I heard you're starting your own shop," she said. "I want in. I've got savings I can invest, and I know the administrative side inside out." Jessica's offer was a lifeline, not just financially, but emotionally. Having someone believe in my vision enough to invest their savings validated my decision in a way nothing else had. Together, we refined the business plan, incorporating her administrative expertise with my technical knowledge. Still, we were short of the capital needed for essential equipment. That's when Frank Hamilton, my former supplier, entered the picture again. After reviewing our business plan, he offered a surprising proposal. "I've been in this business 40 years, he said, "and I know quality when I see it. Your work is some of the best I've seen. I'll put up 30% of your startup costs for a 15% stake in the business and exclusive supplier status for 3 years." With Frank's investment, Jessica's savings, and my own funds, we secured enough to lease the essential equipment and renovate the space. The business was becoming real. No longer just plans on paper, but a tangible future. Choosing a name was the final step in solidifying our identity. After much deliberation, we settled on Forged by Megan, emphasizing my personal craftsmanship and distinguishing us from the increasingly generic offerings of Reynolds Custom Metal Works. The first confrontation with my past came unexpectedly at Hamilton Supply. I was examining material samples when Tyler walked in, stopping short when he saw me. For a moment, surprise registered on his face before he recovered his corporate smile. "Megan, good to see you. Picking up supplies for a hobby project?" The condescension in his tone made my spine stiffen. "Actually, I'm selecting materials for Forged by Megan, my new fabrication business. We're starting with a full commission for the Whitfield Lake House project." His smile faltered. "Whitfield? He's our client." "Was your client," I corrected, meeting his gaze steadily. "He's looking for the quality craftsmanship Reynolds used to be known for." For the first time, I saw uncertainty flicker across Tyler's face. It was a small victory, but in that moment, I knew with absolute certainty that I had made the right decision. The path forward wouldn't be easy, but it was mine. Transforming the dilapidated auto shop into a functional metal fabrication workshop required weeks of grueling labor. Jessica and I worked evenings and weekends, scrubbing decades of automotive grease from concrete floors, rewiring outdated electrical systems, and installing proper ventilation. Every dollar was precious. Every decision scrutinized for necessity versus luxury. The space gradually took shape, clean, functional, organized for efficiency. Unlike the increasingly corporate atmosphere Tyler had created at Reynolds, we designed our workshop to showcase the craft. The front reception area featured exposed metal details and a large window looking into the workshop, making the fabrication process visible to clients. While renovations progressed, I enrolled in night classes on small business management at the community college. The irony wasn't lost on me. After years of my parents valuing Rachel and Tyler's business degrees over my practical experience, I was now balancing both. The classes confirmed much of what I already knew instinctively, but provided structure and terminology for concepts I'd been practicing for years. Our first major equipment delivery became an unexpected setback. The industrial forge we'd ordered arrived damaged, with replacement parts weeks away. With James Whitfield's project deadline looming, this delay threatened our first major commission. I called every contact in my network, eventually locating a used forge at a retiring blacksmith's shop 2 states away. Jessica and I rented a truck and drove 15 hours round trip to secure it, arriving back at 3 a.m., exhausted but triumphant. News of my venture spread through the industry. Nick, the Finnish specialist from Reynolds, called offering to work weekends until we could afford to hire him full-time. Other former colleagues reached out with offers of help, connection to potential clients, or simply moral support. The metalworking community, it seemed, valued craftsmanship and loyalty over family politics. One connection led to Brian Mitchell, a talented recent graduate from the Technical College's metalworking program. What he lacked in experience, he made up for in enthusiasm and natural ability. Unable to offer competitive wages initially, I proposed an apprenticeship arrangement, reduced salary in exchange for intensive training. He accepted immediately, becoming our first official employee. With space secured and essential equipment installed, we needed to establish our distinctive style. Reynolds had been known for traditional, high-quality metalwork before Tyler's changes. Forged by Megan would honor those traditions while incorporating modern design elements and innovative techniques I'd been wanting to explore for years but had been vetoed by my increasingly conservative father. The first month was brutal. Working 16-hour days to meet James Whitfield's deadline, I barely saw my apartment. Every piece had to be perfect. Our reputation would be built on this first major project. At night, my hands cramped from the day's work, but the satisfaction of creating something that was truly mine overshadowed the physical discomfort. Jessica managed our fledgling social media presence, posting videos of the crafting process, explaining techniques, and showcasing the artistry behind quality metalwork. We emphasized transparency, letting clients see exactly how their pieces were being created. The response was enthusiastic, with comments specifically noting the contrast to the increasingly opaque and mass-produced approach Reynolds was now taking. By the end of our first month, we'd completed enough of Whitfield's commission to request the next payment installment, which barely covered our expenses. We were operating on razor-thin margins, but we were operating, a significant achievement for a new business in a capital-intensive industry. The legal attack came without warning. A certified letter arrived containing a cease and desist from Reynolds Custom Metal Works, claiming I was using proprietary techniques and trade secrets in my new business. The irony was bitter. The very techniques they were claiming as proprietary were ones I had developed myself over years at the family shop. I consulted an attorney who specialized in small business law. Her assessment was reassuring. They have no case. Metalworking techniques generally cannot be protected as trade secrets unless they're truly unique and proprietary. Your knowledge and skills are yours to use. Still, the letter was a stark reminder of the forces aligned against my success. Through industry connections, I learned that Reynolds was losing clients steadily. Quality issues had become impossible to ignore, with several projects requiring extensive repairs or complete reworking. Tyler had cut costs so dramatically that basic durability was being compromised. The business my grandfather had built on quality and integrity was becoming known for shortcuts and mediocrity. Despite the satisfaction this news should have brought, I felt only sadness. The legacy of 3 generations was being dismantled by someone who saw it only as a balance sheet, not as a craft or tradition. But I couldn't save Reynolds. I could only build something new that honored what it once represented. As the deadline for Whitfield's project approached, we worked around the clock to ensure every detail met our exacting standards. The night before delivery, I stayed alone in the workshop until dawn, personally inspecting every inch of the elaborate railings and custom fireplace fixtures. When I finally stepped back to assess the completed work, exhaustion gave way to pride. This wasn't just quality metalwork, it was art, the perfect foundation for our new reputation. James Whitfield's reaction confirmed our success. Inspecting the installed pieces at the lake house site, he circled the main staircase railing 3 times, examining every connection and detail. "This," he finally said, "is what I expect when I commission custom metalwork. This is craftsmanship." He immediately referred us to 2 other architects in his firm, providing a crucial pipeline of future projects. By the end of our first quarter, we had established a precarious financial stability. We weren't profitable yet, but we were covering costs and building a reputation for exceptional quality. Each completed project brought new referrals, and our social media following grew steadily as Jessica documented our processes and showcased our craftsmanship. The most gratifying moment came when Brian, now fully trained on basic techniques, completed his first solo project, a custom mailbox post that perfectly executed the design while adding subtle artistic elements that enhanced the overall aesthetic. Watching him develop as a craftsman reminded me of my own early days learning under my father and grandfather. Despite everything that had happened, that tradition of mentorship and excellence would continue through Forged by Megan. 6 months into building Forged by Megan, I received an unexpected call from Tyler. His voice carried the forced cheerfulness of a salesman as he suggested meeting for coffee to clear the air. Against Jessica's advice, I agreed, curious about his sudden interest in reconciliation. The upscale cafe he chose was telling, a place to see and be seen, not a location for honest conversation. Tyler arrived in a tailored suit, looking every bit the corporate executive rather than someone who ran a metal fabrication shop. After perfunctory pleasantries, he launched into what sounded like a rehearsed speech. "Family businesses are complicated, Megan. Emotions run high. But at the end of the day, we're all family." He leaned forward with practiced sincerity. "I've been thinking about ways to bring you back into the fold. We could use your technical expertise at Reynolds." "What exactly are you proposing?" I asked, keeping my expression neutral despite the anger simmering beneath the surface. "A consulting role," he offered magnanimously. "You'd advise on technical aspects without the burden of day-to-day operations. We'd even consider acquiring your client list as part of the arrangement." And there it was, the real purpose of this meeting. Not reconciliation, but acquisition. Reynolds was losing clients to Forged by Megan, and Tyler wanted to buy back what he'd driven away. "My client relationships aren't for sale," I replied evenly. "They chose Forged by Megan because they value quality craftsmanship and direct communication with the artisans creating their work." Tyler's facade cracked slightly. "You're making this personal, Megan. It's just business." "It became personal when my parents transferred a family legacy I'd worked 16 years to build," I countered. "But you're right about one thing. Now it is just business. And my business is doing just fine without Reynolds' involvement." I left the cafe with renewed determination. Tyler's attempted acquisition confirmed what I'd suspected. Forged by Megan was becoming a genuine threat to Reynolds. The next attack came through the rumor mill. Clients began calling with concerns about our reliability, mentioning word going around that we were understaffed and taking on more projects than we could handle. One potential customer specifically cited Rachel Reynolds as their information source. My own sister was actively undermining my business with false information. When Brian received a call from Tyler offering him a position at Reynolds with a salary 30% higher than what we could afford, the pattern became unmistakable. They were attempting to cripple our operation by poaching our limited staff. Brian, to his immense credit, declined the offer and immediately informed me. "I'd rather build something meaningful here than be a cog in whatever they're turning Reynolds into," he explained. The confrontation came to a head at the Regional Architectural Metals trade show. Forged by Megan had invested significantly in a booth showcasing our work, including an elaborate sculptural piece I'd been designing after hours for weeks. The piece combined traditional forging techniques with contemporary design elements, perfectly embodying our philosophy of honoring tradition while embracing innovation. I was explaining the fabrication process to an interested architect when Tyler's voice boomed from behind me. "Reynolds techniques on display? I see." I turned to find Tyler and Rachel standing there, both in matching company polos with the new Reynolds logo. "These are my techniques, Tyler. Ones I developed personally." "Developed while employed by Reynolds," he countered loudly, drawing attention from nearby booths. "Using Reynolds equipment, Reynolds materials, Reynolds knowledge. Knowledge passed down by my grandfather and father," I responded, keeping my voice level despite the anger building. Knowledge I expanded through 16 years of dedication to the craft. Rachel stepped forward, her voice carrying to ensure others heard. "It's unfortunate you're using proprietary family techniques to compete against your own family business. Dad's heartbroken about your betrayal." The accusations stung, especially the mention of our father. Before I could respond, a deep voice interrupted from the growing crowd of onlookers. "I've worked with 3 generations of Reynolds metalsmiths," said Marcus Peterson, a respected industry veteran who had known my grandfather. "And I can tell you without question that what Megan is doing honors the true Reynolds tradition far more than what's happening at the shop now." His public support silenced Tyler momentarily. Other longtime industry members murmured agreement, several moving to examine our display pieces more closely. The confrontation had backfired, drawing attention to our work rather than discrediting it. The trade show proved pivotal in establishing Forged by Megan's reputation. Our showcase sculpture won the Innovation in Traditional Techniques Award, earning prominent coverage in the industry magazine. More importantly, we secured contracts with 3 new architectural firms, including Mackenzie Partners, which had been exclusively using Reynolds for decades. The final confrontation came as we were packing up our booth. Rachel approached alone, her expression thunderous. "Congratulations on stealing the Mackenzie account," she hissed. "Do you have any idea what you're doing to the family? Dad's blood pressure is through the roof because of your selfish decision to compete against us." "I didn't steal anything, Rachel. I offered quality and craftsmanship, exactly what Reynolds used to represent before you and Tyler started gutting everything that made it special." "You're destroying the family with this vendetta," she insisted. "Mom and Dad can barely mention your name without getting upset." "I'm not the one who destroyed anything," I replied, my voice finally betraying emotion. "I'm building something new because what was promised to me was taken away. If that's uncomfortable for everyone, maybe you should examine why." As Rachel stormed off, I noticed my parents standing at the Reynolds booth across the exhibition hall. They had witnessed the entire exchange, and for a brief moment, my father's eyes met mine. Something flickered across his face. Regret, perhaps, or recognition. But he quickly looked away when my mother touched his arm, guiding him back to their company representatives. Walking back to our booth, I found Jessica directing the breakdown process with characteristic efficiency. "That went well," she said with deliberate understatement, nodding toward the departing Reynolds contingent. "Better than expected," I agreed. And we're just getting started. 9 months after founding Forged by Megan, our trajectory was undeniable. The workshop space, once cavernous for our small team, now felt increasingly cramped as projects accumulated. The trade show exposure had generated steady inquiries, and James Whitfield's continued advocacy brought high-end architectural commissions that established our reputation for exceptional quality. Our defining moment came when the City Arts Commission selected Forged by Megan for a prestigious public installation in the renovated downtown plaza. The project, a series of sculptural benches and decorative safety railings, Isbilia cars would be seen by thousands daily. The commission had specifically cited our innovative blend of traditional craftsmanship and contemporary design in their selection announcement. Jessica expanded her role from office management to client relations, freeing me to focus on craftsmanship and design. Brian had developed into a skilled metalworker capable of executing complex projects with minimal supervision. We hired 2 additional craftspeople, Maria, a talented welder with an artistic background, and Kevin, an experienced metalworker who had left Reynolds after disagreeing with Tyler's quality compromises. Our success drew industry attention. Metal Design Monthly published a 6-page feature on our workshop, highlighting our commitment to quality materials and traditional techniques while embracing innovative designs. The article contrasted our approach with industry trends toward cost-cutting and mass production, an implicit criticism of Reynolds' new direction. Though the article never mentioned them by name, Tyler's response to our rising profile became increasingly desperate. Reynolds slashed prices to undercut our bids, offering discounts that couldn't possibly maintain quality or profitability. They launched an aggressive marketing campaign, emphasizing their 45-year legacy while introducing automated processes that betrayed that very legacy. The conflict escalated when we discovered someone had filed anonymous complaints against our workshop with city code enforcement. The complaints alleged safety violations, improper waste disposal, and operating without proper permits. The resulting inspection found nothing substantive. We had been meticulous about compliance, but the process consumed valuable time and created unnecessary stress. Through an industry contact, we learned Tyler had been asking pointed questions about our permits and operations just days before the complaints were filed. The connection was obvious, if unprovable. The situation took a darker turn when my father suffered a heart attack. I learned about it not from family, but through Frank Hamilton, who mentioned it in passing, assuming I already knew. The news hit me hard. Despite everything, he was still my father. I sent flowers to the hospital with a simple note. Wishing you a speedy recovery, Megan. The next day, my mother called for the first time since I'd left Reynolds. Her voice was tight with barely controlled emotion. How dare you send flowers as if you care? Your father is in the hospital because of the stress you've caused this family with your vindictive competition. The accusation left me breathless. Mom, that's not fair. I didn't want any of this. I just wanted to continue the work I love after you and Dad took away the future you promised me. You're killing your father with this, she continued as if I hadn't spoken. Is your pride worth destroying your family? After she hung up, I sat in the workshop after hours, surrounded by projects in various stages of completion. Each represented not revenge but resurrection of my career, my passion, my self-respect. Was I supposed to abandon all of it? To sacrifice my livelihood and identity? Because my parents regretted the consequences of their own decisions? The conflict reached its climax when Reynolds Custom Metal Works lost a major contract with Henderson Development after delivering substandard work for their previous project. The replacement contractor, forged by Megan. Mr. Henderson personally called to explain his decision, citing quality issues with the railings Reynolds had installed in their downtown office building, railings that had required extensive repairs within months of installation. I took no pleasure in Reynolds' failure, but the Henderson contract was significant enough to secure our financial stability and enable expansion. We leased additional space adjacent to our workshop, purchased equipment we'd been renting, and hired an administrative assistant to help Jessica manage our growing workload. Just as things were looking up, Rachel unexpectedly appeared at our workshop one afternoon. Her designer sunglasses couldn't hide her reddened eyes, and her usual polished appearance showed signs of strain. Tyler made a mistake, she announced without preamble. The Henderson project, he used the wrong alloy for the outdoor installations. They're failing inspection, and Henderson is threatening legal action. Why are you telling me this? I asked cautiously. Because they're asking for you specifically to fix it, she admitted. The words clearly painful. And because Tyler's been cutting corners I didn't know about. Things are worse than I realized. For the first time, I glimpsed uncertainty in my sister's eyes, the possibility that she had backed the wrong horse. That the husband she had championed, for whom she had been willing to damage her relationship with her sister, might not be the business genius she had believed. I'm sorry about the Henderson situation, I said carefully. But that's a Reynolds problem now, not mine. Can't you just help this once? She pressed. For the family? The irony was sharp enough to cut. The family didn't consider me when making decisions that affected my entire future, I reminded her. I had to create my own path. Maybe Reynolds needs to do the same now. As Rachel left, I refused to feel guilty for not rescuing the business that had cast me aside. Yet, I also took no satisfaction in their struggles. What I felt instead was a complex mixture of vindication and sadness, as recognition that my concerns about Tyler's approach had been valid, coupled with genuine regret that my family's legacy was suffering for it. That evening, as we closed up the shop, Jessica summarized our position with characteristic directness. "We're not just surviving anymore, Megan. We're thriving." She was right. In less than a year, we had built something remarkable, not just a successful business, but a workshop that honored the traditions of craftsmanship while embracing innovation and quality. We had created a place where artisans were valued, where craftsmanship mattered more than cost-cutting, where the work itself was the primary measure of success. The phone call from my father came later that night. His voice, weaker than I remembered but still familiar, carried a weight of unspoken emotions. "The shop isn't the same without you, Meggie," he said, using my childhood nickname for the first time in years. It was the closest he had come to an admission of regret. I didn't know yet how to bridge the chasm that had formed between us, but perhaps acknowledging its existence was the first step. The one-year anniversary of Forged by Megan arrived with little fanfare. We were too busy with projects to plan a celebration. Our workshop now employed 7 full-time craftspeople plus administrative staff. The adjacent space had been converted into a design studio where clients could discuss projects amid examples of our work. Our reputation for exceptional quality and innovative design had spread beyond local markets, bringing commissions from neighboring states. The financial statements Jessica placed on my desk that morning told the story in numbers. We were not just stable but profitable, with projections indicating continued growth. What had begun as a desperate act of survival had transformed into a thriving business that honored traditional craftsmanship while embracing contemporary design. I was reviewing designs for an upcoming project when Jessica appeared at my office door. "Your parents are here," she said quietly. "Both of them." My heart hammered as I walked to the reception area. I hadn't seen my father since his heart attack 4 months ago, and my last conversation with my mother had ended in accusations. They looked older, somehow diminished, standing awkwardly amid displays of our work. "Dad, Mom," I greeted them cautiously. "This is unexpected." My father stepped forward, his movements more careful than I remembered. "We should have called first," he acknowledged. "But we needed to see you, and to see what you've built here. Would you like a tour?" I offered, professional courtesy masking the emotional turmoil beneath. We walked through the workshop, past craftspeople focused on their work. My father paused repeatedly, examining finished pieces and works in progress with a craftsman's eye. He asked technical questions about our processes, nodded approvingly at our material choices, studied our equipment setup with evident appreciation. My mother remained quiet, her expression unreadable. In my office, the real purpose of their visit emerged. "Reynolds is in trouble," my father said bluntly. "Serious trouble. Tyler has nearly bankrupted the company," my mother added, her voice tight. "He took out loans for expansions that never generated returns, switched to materials that failed quality tests, lost our core clients through mismanagement." "I'm sorry to hear that," I said carefully, unsure what they expected from me. "We made a mistake, Megan," my father said, the admission visibly difficult. "We should have listened to your concerns about Tyler's changes. We should have honored what we promised you." The validation I had once desperately craved now brought complicated emotions. "It wasn't just about the ownership transfer," I said quietly. "It was being dismissed after 16 years of dedication. It was watching everything grandfather built, everything you built, being dismantled for quick profits." My father nodded slowly. "I see that now. Too late, maybe, but I see it." "What about Rachel?" I asked. "Where does she stand in all this?" My mother sighed. "Their marriage is failing. The business failure has created tensions. She's begun to see aspects of Tyler's character that concern her." After a moment's hesitation, my father reached the heart of the matter. "We want to ask if you would consider coming back to help save Reynolds, the family legacy." The request hung in the air between us. A year ago, it might have been all I wanted to hear. Now, surrounded by the business I had built from nothing, It struck me as both ironic and insufficient. I have my own legacy now, I said, gesturing around us. Forged by Megan isn't just a name, it's everything I've always believed metalwork should be. Quality, integrity, craftsmanship. We understand, my mother said. Disappointment evident. We just thought. I didn't say no, I clarified. But I can't abandon what I've built here. If there's a way forward, it would have to be through collaboration, not absorption. My father straightened slightly, hope flickering. What are you suggesting? A merger, I said, the idea crystallizing as I spoke. Reynolds Custom Metal Works has history and name recognition. Forged by Megan has innovative approaches and quality standards. Together, they could represent both tradition and progress. We discussed possibilities, legal structures, management approaches, division of responsibilities. The conversation was tentative, exploring rather than deciding, but it represented the first genuine dialogue we'd had in over a year. There would need to be clear boundaries, I insisted, transparent ownership structure, defined quality standards, and Tyler could not be part of management. My father nodded grimly. Tyler's role is being reevaluated. But these terms make sense. As they prepared to leave, my father paused by a display case containing my first major piece, the sculptural element that had won recognition at the trade show. This is exceptional work, Megan, he said softly. Your grandfather would have been proud. The words pierced something long frozen within me. I learned from the best, I replied, my voice unsteady. 2 days later, the final confrontation with Tyler occurred at Reynolds' offices. My parents had arranged the meeting as a first step toward potential collaboration. Rachel was present, seated slightly apart from Tyler, her expression guarded. Tyler's facade of confidence had cracked. The impeccable suit remained, but stress had etched lines around his eyes and mouth. This is unnecessary, he began defensively. We're experiencing temporary cash flow issues, that's all. My 5-year plan has failed, my father interrupted flatly. The question now is whether there will be anything left of Reynolds to save. I outlined my proposal, a merger of businesses with clear ownership structure, defined quality standards, and a management approach that honored both tradition and innovation. But this can only work with the right leadership, I concluded. Leadership that understands metalwork isn't just a commodity to be produced as cheaply as possible. Tyler's expression darkened. So that's what this is, a power play. Megan swoops in to take control when things get difficult. This isn't about control, I countered. It's about preserving what 3 generations have built. It's about quality and craftsmanship. Gels that Reynolds represented before you started dismantling them. You've wanted me out from day one, he accused. You never accepted that your parents saw something in me that they didn't see in you. Business acumen, vision, leadership. What they saw, I said evenly, was an MBA and a slick presentation. What they missed was that you never understood or valued what made Reynolds special in the first place. Tyler turned to my parents. You're actually considering this? Giving her control after she deliberately competed against us, stole our clients, undermined our reputation? Megan didn't steal anything, Rachel said unexpectedly, her voice quiet but firm. She built something genuine while you've been cutting corners and hiding problems from me, from all of us. The naked surprise on Tyler's face revealed everything. He had assumed Rachel's unconditional support, never imagining she might see through his facade. This is my family business, Tyler insisted, desperation edging his voice. No, my father said simply. It's our family business. And we failed to honor that when we sidelined Megan. We're trying to correct that mistake. Tyler refused the compromise, rejected the merger proposal, and stormed out, effectively ending both the meeting and, it seemed, his marriage. Rachel remained behind, looking both shaken and resolved. I didn't want to believe it, she admitted after Tyler left. But the financial records don't lie. The quality complaints don't lie. The lost clients don't lie. She met my eyes directly, and you weren't lying when you warned us about his approach. It wasn't quite an apology, but from Rachel, it was significant. A door opening where a wall had stood. The following weeks brought intense negotiations, legal consultations, and difficult conversations. The merger framework gradually took shape. Reynolds and Daughter Custom Metal Works would combine the historical reputation of Reynolds with the innovative approaches and quality standards of Forged by Megan. Ownership would be restructured, with my parents maintaining a stake but transferring controlling interest to Rachel and me equally. Rachel surprised me with her engagement in the process. Freed from Tyler's influence, she applied her genuine business skills towards stabilizing the company's finances while respecting the craftsmanship aspects that had always been secondary to Tyler. We rediscovered the complementary strengths we had as sisters. My technical expertise and design sensibility balancing her administrative and marketing abilities. On the day we signed the final merger documents, my father brought out a dusty bottle of scotch he'd been saving since my grandfather's time. He always said this was for a special occasion, he explained, pouring small glasses for each of us. I think he'd agree this qualifies. We raised our glasses in a toast, not just to the new business structure, but to the healing of old wounds, the recognition of painful truths, the possibility of moving forward without forgetting the past. Later that evening, alone in what had once been my original workshop at Forged by Megan, I reflected on the journey. The betrayal had been real and painful. The struggle to rebuild had been exhausting and uncertain. But the outcome, professionally and personally, had forced growth I might never have achieved otherwise. Sometimes, it takes losing everything to discover what you're truly capable of building. Have you ever had to rebuild after a major setback or betrayal? How did you find the strength to start over? Share your story in the comments below. I'd love to hear how you turned adversity into opportunity, just like Megan did in this story. Don't forget to like this video if Megan's journey resonated with you. Subscribe to hear more stories of resilience and determination, and hit that share button to inspire someone else who might be facing their own challenges today. Remember, sometimes the most difficult chapters of our lives lead to the most triumphant stories. Thank you for listening, and I'll catch you in the next video.